topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Triversity Talk. I'm Wendy Stewart. I'd like to welcome you on this wickedly wonderful Wednesday. That was a lot of W's. I am happy to be here with you tonight with another amazing Triversity Talk. I have to share with you what I had as the most incredible experience this week. You know, I'm not a big concert goer in the sense that like I'll go to any concert that's like a huge thing like at Madison Square Garden where I don't even know how to order tickets. I will confess, I'm about confessing that. But a friend of mine called me up and said, I have 2 extra tickets to Madonna's Celebration concert for the very last night in New York. And I was there and I haven't seen Madonna, and this is a true story. I haven't seen Madonna since the early 80s when we danced at Danceteria on the dance floor with a bunch of other people. She was just another girl who was trying to make it. She was trying to hawk her song. She did have like her music. I think the song was Everybody, and she was trying to get Jelly Bean Benitez to play it. And I was just a girl spraying perfume in Bloomingdale's. How far we've all come, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, right? Look at how our lives are and how things have changed. So for me, seeing Madonna this week was really coming full circle. And, you know, I have to tell you, whether you love her or hate her, whether you love her music or hate her music, you got to give Madge a hand. I mean, she's in her late 60s and she gives a hell of a concert. And I don't just mean all the incredible lighting and technical stuff and her amazing dancers. She actually got out there and sang every single one of those songs. And she moved great. She can't dance the way she did when she was 20. And you know what? Neither can the rest of us. Damn, I know a lot of people at 20 who couldn't dance the way she dances now. But she gave such an incredible concert. And one of the things she did that really stuck out in my mind, and if you follow me on Facebook, you can go to Wendy Stewart and see my post. I put a little video up where she thanked the nurse and the staff at Lenox Hill Hospital because she almost died in July. And I don't think people realize how close she came. And to have been where she was in July and then to be on this tour, she started like in October, is just absolutely amazing. And I want to add one more thing. Okay. You want to talk about gratitude? She dedicated a song to the nurse who sat by her in her darkest hours when she was very, very close to the edge and people weren't sure of how well she was going to do because she was in the ICU at that point. The nurse's name was Maria, and I made a little video clip. It is on my Facebook page. You can catch it there. But I share that with you because it's about gratitude and about thanking and about being spiritual. Which brings me to my guest tonight. For many LGBTQ plus Christians, they're trying to reconcile a religion like Christianity, where they often feel they're demonized. But doesn't God love everyone conditionally? Well, I'd like to welcome you tonight to a talk about this book and the amazing author who wrote it. It's called Jeza's Jesus Juice: That Rare Safe Space for Those Who Are Committed to Their Faith but Need to Find Meaning in Christianity that Does Not Negate Their Queer Identity. Now think about that. That is very, very complex thought, especially when you think about what's going on nowadays and what you hear in the Christian faith. Now, who better to serve it up than Jeza Belle, the drag queen comedian and the author of Jeza's Jesus Juice, a drag queen's Christian devotional.
Yay! Here I am. Woo!
And there you are. You came right in on cue.
Yes, and we both got the book, and I'm so excited to talk about it.
I thank you. Your book, first of all, I love the way it's structured, and we'll talk about that. But it's chock full of so much love and acceptance in terms of Christianity, which that's comes up so much, right? Because I've had so many people on this show that have told me they grew up Christian and, they never felt accepted. They felt less than, they felt demonized, and they left. So many people, and you hear it as much as I do, they had to leave organized religion. All right. Just working for them. Christianity in particular. Jeza Belle, why did you write this book?
Well, I'm going to go back to when it was conceived.
Okay.
And one night, about a little over a year ago, I was lying in my bed very late at night and I could not sleep. And so I was tossing and turning and I thought to myself, well, I think I'll pray. I'm like, Lord, please, I have like the craziest day tomorrow. Please help me fall asleep. And then I heard a little song from the musical, or if you remember the movie, The Color Purple.
Of course.
And the song said, maybe God is trying to tell you something, right? You can't sleep at night and you wonder why. Maybe God is trying to tell you something. And so I said, God, what are you trying to tell me? And I heard, if you were to die tomorrow, what's the one thing that you didn't do that really, really mattered to you? And within minutes, I knew this book's title and I knew all of the chapters that would be in it.
You knew all the...
Wow. Yeah. And that's how this book was conceived. God was trying to tell me something, I think.
So basically, you're very much spiritually connected. This is what I'm getting. And when you are on that level, right, and things aren't right, you have to wait for the answer to come to you and know that it will. And it did. This is an incredible story because obviously a few years ago, it wasn't in the plan. And then a year ago, it materialized. And of course, it materialized when I have this thing too, where you knew all the names of the chapters that were going to be in it.
Yes, absolutely. And it just came to me. And, this book really is the essence of who I am as a human being. And I thought there's just no other way that I could do this than in this character that I am, Jeza Belle, because we are so demonized as a community on so many levels. Yes. Yet if you really look at the biblical experience, it is through the people that human beings think are the least worthy or the least respectable or the least that God would ever choose are the ones that God chooses.
They're chosen. Those are the people, right, at the end of the day, that are chosen. So I know you went to a Christian college, but what was your upbringing like?
That's a great question. I'm actually a Jewish Christian, a very rare Jewish Christian, in that my family was Jewish and we converted at one point. Somebody knocked on our door and my mother said, I'm going to let this person in and I'm going to show her once and for all that Jesus is not the Messiah. So they never knock on another door and they leave us alone.
Great
and
story.
She wound up studying, and she wound up studying with a bunch of rabbis, and they actually walked her to the temple door and told her never to come back because they were not really able to answer what she was asking. And she converted to Christianity. That's how I became a Christian from my mother. But we maintained our Jewish heritage, much like the first century apostles. And so we're Jewish by culture, by birth, but religiously, we're believers in Jesus as the Messiah.
That is, first of all, an incredible story that that this change would happen in your family by somebody that came knocking at your door,
Yes, and my mother's a Spitfire, so she thought, well, I'm going to teach them. Get this
I'm
lady right out of here. Yeah, they'll never knock on another door again by the time I'm done.
I mean, wow, look at what. So, how was this for you? Because you were a kid. How was this for you all of a sudden to be embracing Christianity?
It was a really fascinating experience because my family is, like I said, almost all Jewish. And so it was like, what in the hell? Like, you guys have become Christians? And so it was a real push and pull for a
Right.
while until they kind of got used to it. And then I decided that I wanted to. What happened was I actually had heart surgery when I was 19, and I decided that I would go from my regular college to a Christian college. And I thought I really, really always wanted to be a minister. And when I was there at this Christian college, I thought to myself, how can I be a minister? I just don't fit that mold. You know,
Right.
I get teased for being effeminate. It's not a match for me. I'm trying to force myself to be them, but I'm not them. And I can't really see doing it as me. And so I kept my faith, but I ditched them. And then
Right.
all these years later, I feel like I've come full circle. You talk about full circle because I feel like today I am a minister, just a kind of strange sort.
Oh, right. No, absolutely. I mean, I'm reading this book and I was going to ask you if you are a minister. I don't know that much about you, by the way. This is what you have to know. I just know you're a comedian and we have a lot of mutual friends in common and I like you, but I'm reading this and I'm like, damn. How does Jeza Belle know all this stuff? How did all this come to you? I just want to backtrack a little bit because it seems to me you had heart surgery at 19. Was that an epiphany for you?
In some ways, yes. It was an epiphany in that I realized at that moment what I really wanted to do. It kind of crystallized something
Right.
in me, but it didn't really spark something different in my faith because I just always, since the dawn of my being, remember having this deep, close, and abiding relationship with God. It was
God.
something that just was born into me. And
Right.
it's almost like fascinating and mind-boggling and sort of like heart-wrenching for me when I know that people don't, because it's such a core part of my being. And it's something that grounds me and gives me so much meaning and helps me through every single day that I couldn't imagine not having that relationship.
As you talk about this, I'm in defense of those. So of course I'm a kindred spirit to you, but I know the other kinds of people and they've evolved. People evolve differently. You have to know that. And
Absolutely.
some of us I've just always been super spiritual. I did not come from a religious home. I'm Jewish on my dad's side, Protestant on my mother's side, and then my parents got into Christian Science. That's as close as
Wow.
I know. That was pretty wild, but I always felt an amazing closeness to God. And when I thought things were, at their most desperate or things were going to be so bad, I would pray and pray and pray. I remember that. And as you emphasized in your book with a lot of your stories, God always comes through. But I think God comes through because there are those of us that really, we believe so hard, and we make that connection. We make that spiritual connection. Obviously, this is something that's in you.
Definitely. And it can come in various forms. And one thing I'm very clear about in the book, even though I am get deep into the scripture, that I'm not God, and there are so many multiple pathways that I'm sure people find their way to a
Right.
relationship. And that's a wonderful and blessed thing. Whatever journey you travel, however you find that peace and make that spiritual connection. I think that's very important.
Right, because it should be your own personal journey.
Absolutely, definitely. But
But
to your question that you did ask, I did want to say,
yeah,
how did I come by this? I really am kind of like a layman's biblical scholar. I've read the Bible so many times. I've studied it so deeply.
I know,
And then
I can tell by what I'm like. I know you as a drag queen comedian. I'm like, how the hell does she know all this?
I've had a lifetime of it, and it's so deeply embedded in every layer of me that goes back to why I did it, because I said, I have something to give. And if I don't have anything else, if nothing else happens after that, I've given the most important part of me. And
Right.
isn't that the most important thing for all of our journeys?
Well, yes, absolutely, that we can, say that before we leave this earth. None of us know where we're going. Well, we have an idea. Some have an idea, but what we do here is really what counts. And for you to create a book like this it's a gift. And I think your timing it is interesting. That's why I asked you, when did this whole idea come about? It makes me think a year ago, when so much was going on in the LGBTQ community, so many anti bills were being passed in so many states, and there were attacks. I mean, the LGBT community was still being attacked now. Trans people, it's ruthless, the attacks
Yes.
on trans people. So with all that being said, it was almost like you couldn't sleep because somebody was saying to you, Jezebel, this is the wake up call. You gotta get people woke up. And it's
Mm.
interesting to me that you did it through Christianity, because in the LGBTQ community, a lot of people are leaving Christianity in droves. You're saying, no, there's a place for you here. You can
Yes.
stay.
Definitely. And so one of the first chapters was supposed to be the first chapter, wound up the second, is this idea of radical inclusivity. Because Christianity, Christ himself, was radically inclusive. He was
Right,
not somebody closing the door on people who others thought should not be coming to this table.
right.
Instead, he was the one rushing out to wash their feet and welcome them to the door. So to your point about the politicization, if I butcher that word,
That's okay. I
that's
do it
really
all
where
the time myself.
blah, blah, right, little tongue twisters. That's a lot of what was fed into at least the structure, sort of creating a safe space. And I was trying to be a bulwark against the politicization of Christianity that has really taken place enormously in the United States over the past few decades.
Oh,
And so we look at, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, we look
And
at government and it's like run amok. They're talking about Christianity left and right, and everything they're talking about literally has nothing to do with God.
oh,
So
it's got nothing to do with God, and it's actually like horrific and hurtful and makes people feel bad. And yet they have, and maybe you can help me a little bit with this. How do you
I'll
think?
try.
Okay, because you got me on your train now, Jezebel. How do you think they're reconciling these feelings within themselves, right? When they're passing bills against the LGBTQ plus community, when they're saying hateful things, when they're saying, "Oh, we need to cut off hormones for people that are transitioning." These are horrific things, right? It's like we're not going to give a diabetic insulin because they're just bad people, right? It's in the same category to take someone's hormones away from them or make it impossible. What do you think? Because they call themselves Christians, what do you think they're thinking when they're saying this? How did they defend this way of thinking?
To me, they are the modern day Pharisee. So if you
Ah,
look back at the time of Jesus, the Pharisees and the Sadducees were the leading biblical leaders and scholars of the day, and they did the same sort of things. They were ruthless and unkind to people. It was to the jot and tittle, as they would say, the letter of the law, but they missed the whole spirit of what the arc of the biblical story was supposed to be about. So when
mhm,
I look at these politicians today and passing all of these bills, I see them as whitewashed tombs, the same
right,
way Jesus saw the Pharisees as whitewashed tombs. Sure, they look great on the outside, but they're a hot mess on the inside,
right.
right? And so they're worried about us. They want to shout and scream about everything's going to happen to us when we meet our maker. I'd quake in my boots if I knew that I was leading a life that was so hate filled.
Hate filled.
Yeah, and and that was my legacy that I was leaving behind and moving on would scare the ever living bejesus out of me. I couldn't even begin to tell you.
Right. And yet they don't really have an issue with it. I mean, how much, you're really knowledgeable about the Bible. I am not, I'm not. I know a lot about a lot of religions, but I'm not knowledgeable about the Bible. However, I I listen to things they say and I see how they twist things. And they twist it to their own advantage. They reinterpret. All right. And they basically take the Bible, as you know, it's open to interpretation. But one thing that reads true, God loves everybody. You find that again and again.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, some people have remarked to me, like, how in the world did you decide to use so many scriptures in this book?
That was
And
going
I
to be my
say,
next question to you. Right.
yeah. And I say, I run right to those scriptures and right to those words, because if you really look at them, they do not support that type of hatred and what I consider to be evil. They really don't. We can pick and choose anything to
Right.
support something that we want to embrace. And it's very fascinating how, in most times, they pick things to shut people out and break them down.
Right.
I can look at these scriptures, and I encourage all of us to, which is why I wrote the book. Look at these scriptures and push out the human beings. Get to God. Because
Right.
when you move humans out of the equation and out of the interpretation, and you look at the context of what was written and why, who it was written to, it becomes quite clear that these things are not the hate-filled scriptures that they have led us to believe. And I'm tired, for one, of having them use it as a bludgeon to have
They
kept,
have.
I don't even know how many millions of people away from Christianity over centuries. And it's
Right.
enough. And I'm standing up.
Right. As we say, you're mad as hell and you're not going to take it anymore.
Absolutely. And I'm doing it with a pink covered book, and they can suck on it if they don't like it.
Right. They better drink this Jesus juice.
Exactly.
The scripture from Luke 6:37, do not judge and you will not be judged. Do not condemn and you will not be condemned. Forgive and you will be forgiven. That particular scripture, I don't know. It's something I think about a lot. And what I love about, besides you give a prayer at the end of that chapter, you give a reflection, such as, are there people in my life I need to forgive for what they have done to either me or others? Who are they and what do I need to forgive them for? And then you give the suggestion, create a special prayer where you lift each of these people up to God and release them. And then you release yourself from the burden of holding on to the past hurt. That is like, you give a lot of practical advice in here.
I try to intersperse a little humor, a little practical advice. And to your point, I do provide prayers at the end of every chapter because, sometimes it's not easy to find the words. And
Right.
so those prayers are meant to be a pathway to develop your own way of speaking to God if you can't find that way yourself. And then the reflection questions were meant to do just that, to push us to kind of think on what's the next step for me. That particular chapter that you're talking about is really about forgiveness. And it really, for me, gets to the heart of the fact that I don't care what anybody's done to me in this life. I really don't hold any hate in my heart, even towards the worst of people, because you know what? As the scripture read, I was forgiven. If I was forgiven for all the crazies, believe me, I'm sure I've been far from perfect in this life, and I probably will be far from perfect for the rest of this life, right? But if I can be
not
forgiven,
perfect for people. None of us are perfect.
yeah, exactly. But who am I to not forgive somebody else, and to hold on? And it winds up actually darkening you, right? And pulling you down.
Right.
So release yourself from that. Free yourself.
So, when I was going through this, I was thinking, are you planning on giving like a course in this that you would, I think it's a great idea to do, by the way. I thought of this and I'm like, I'm going to ask Jeza Belle, she plans on giving like a course in this book, like Marianne Williamson did a course in miracles. Because the way you come at it, you make it very digestible for people and very accepting for people, and you make people feel okay. You make them feel good. Would you do a course on this?
I absolutely would. And I'm sort of just kind of letting the spirit guide me where it's
Yes.
going to go, and never thought about a course before. So thank you, Wendy. So when I release this course, you're going to be the first person credited on it. A big shout out.
Well,
But I
that
would
was
love
my
to do that.
spirit that was just guiding me, and that happens a lot on this show. And that came into my head while we were talking, and I thought this is something that could be, very, very much needed. Now,
I
I'm
love that
curious,
idea.
have you, just on the topic of Christianity, and the LGBTQ community. Have you had pushback from people in our community like, Jeza Belle, what are you talking about? This is not possible. Has anyone said that to you?
One of the things that I have found a little bit interesting, and kind of like I love a good challenge, is that news media picked up this book, but it was conservative news media that wanted to report on it, right? So of course, within like a minute, I was in Breitbart News, I was in the Federalist Papers, a very MAGA rich and well-funded news organization. I was on a lot of the tech websites, so I've been dragged through the mud already.
What are some of the things they've said about you?
Oh, my favorite one was somebody called it like expon something or other, basically saying the book was poop. It was just so well, the way they wrote it was so hysterical. I know they meant it as an insult, but I found it so hysterical.
Well, you're a comedian, of course.
Yeah, that I've quoted it everywhere because I thought this is probably the best endorsement I'm ever going to get, this tech news site calling this like poo-poo. And I'm like, this is great. Of course. You think
it's not just Jesus juice, it's Jesus poo-poo as well.
Yeah, exactly. But interestingly, whereas I have had multiple things before that have gotten picked up all across LGBTQ media, I haven't heard a lot of people on it. And one of the things that I have heard from people is, I don't know that people are really into that. And part of that is because people have left, to your point, have left, Christianity. And a lot of people, I can't blame them. They've been treated terribly. Right. And then some people will say, I see this as something, you're talking about something that was written like thousands of years ago by man. It's totally either made up or it's not relevant to me today. But that's exactly why I want us to take another look together, because if we look at it, we'll see it really isn't that far off from our lives right now. And so I have been getting...
It's complete. Okay, the reason I came up with this idea of you doing like a workshop in it, it's totally relevant. Okay, the timing is really great. All right, I think people need this right now. And the way you go through the scriptures and explain them, I think you're giving people something to hold on to. And Jeza Belle, with what is going on in the world right now, people are clamoring for something they can sink their teeth in and hold on to. And if you can take, as you did, the Bible and analyze it in the way you did, because remember we said, it's got to do with what you see in those words. If you can give those words those meanings, then why not? Okay, why not make it okay for LGBTQ community people to embrace Christianity if they want to? Because your Christianity, Jeza Belle, is not the Christianity of the hate mongers or the people that analyzed your book in that article in those conservative publications. Yours is a different Christianity, which boils down to, isn't religion how we see it, right? You share so many beautiful things from the Bible in here. You give people a reason that had to leave. You give them a reason to come back. And I think that, that's really everything.
It's Christ Christianity.
Right.
That's my Christianity.
Yes.
It's not human being Christianity.
Thank you.
I'm looking straight. Right. Yeah, I'm looking straight to God. And to your point, somebody did reach out to me and say, I left my church 20 years ago. I've read this book, and it's the first time in 20 years I realized that it's not about those people.
Right.
And that I'm actually going to look at a relationship with God for the first time in 20 years, because I've always thought it was about these people. And so one of the things I feel fortunate about is that in my journey as a Christian, I never, ever let people take away that relationship. That relationship is untouchable by others, but I could see how very easily, and I know so many people who have been dragged down so hard that they equate those deeds with God, and it's not God. It's fucked up. Yes, I love to cuss, by the way. I think I've been pretty good. I've gone 25 minutes without a cuss.
It's okay. You can say it again, please. It makes you feel good. You're here to feel good. But yeah, it's exactly right. It doesn't have to do with God. But what they've done is made people feel so guilty. Like at the point in your life when you were younger, when you realized you were gay, right? What was that like for you in relation to being Christian?
It did take me a hot minute because I actually remember, because I grew up in an evangelical church, right? So the Jewish side of my family was like, whatever, do your
Right.
thing, girl. But the Christian side, and then going to a Christian university, it's like, oh, no, no, no. They do that conversion therapy. You're thrown out of school if they know. I mean,
Well, you
goodness,
were engaged to a woman at one point.
twice I was engaged to women because that's
Right.
what you do. If you
Right.
don't, you're going to hell. I didn't want to marry either, but it was hard. And I remember many times praying. Paul in the Bible was said to have a thorn in his side. And I said, this must be the thorn in my side that I have to learn to live with. And then one day I thought to myself, I think I'm looking at this wrong. I'm thinking maybe the thorn is the fact that I've spent all of this time, right? Like trying to tear myself apart. And maybe that's the thorn, is
Right.
that these other people and what they've put out there
Right.
is the block. And that
It was them, not you. It was clearly them and not you.
exactly. And so here I am, and I'm sure many of them are thrilled, and I'm sure many of them are not.
Do you stay in touch with people from your Christian college?
I do. I stay in touch with a few. Many more of them would talk to me. In the book, I talk about how one reached out to me and said, "Oh, I heard you're gay. I've thought about it and prayed about it, and I decided I will be your friend." And I laughed and I said, "I think you're totally misunderstanding this.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. Like, oh, thank you that you want to be my friend. I'll let you know if I want to be your friend."
Jeza Belle, I thought you
I
were going
don't.
to say the person thought about it and prayed about it and decided they want to be gay too.
There are plenty of them too. I actually do keep in touch with a number who are gay, but a lot of them have been very damaged, much
Right.
more damaged than me, because they were either kicked out or forced to go to conversion therapy. And I would have, kicked somebody's ass if they had tried to do that. Even in my weakest time, my
Right.
foot would have gone up their behind so quickly. So
But you were lucky you were never forced into conversion therapy. I mean, thank God you came from the background you came from,
forced into engagement instead. It was just as torturous. No offense, women. I love you, women. I just was not meant to sleep with you.
No, maybe that's the Jewish side. They're like, Jeza Belle, you need to think about your future. You got to have a wife.
Right, please. Oh my gosh, my mother, forget it. She was like, "Oh, at least if he's gay, is he going to be a doctor?"
Well, you met a partner. You have a husband. Is he a doctor?
No, he's the doctor of my heart, and he's the most
I
wonderful
love it.
person. And he really is a gift to me from God. And my mother, in her much later years, said to me, "Wow, if you were ever going to be gay, I am so glad this is the partner that you found." Because my partner would literally, he's one of the rare few, he would jump in front of a train for me. And there's really not people like that, that are out there. And so we share the same values, which is bizarre because you don't find that a lot today. And
Right.
I just know in my deepest heart of hearts, the moment I met him, I knew that
Right.
he was the gift that was given to me from above.
Yeah. And of course, as you said, you knew it. And you know what, isn't that a blessing? You told a story in the book, when your mother was having a big health issue. And I remember you putting things on Facebook about it. Your mother was seeing angels.
Yes. In fact, she said to me, well, she was seeing all kinds of stuff. I said, just don't see any dead family members. Because if you see that,
Yeah, I
and
know.
worry me, they're like taking you to the door. No, thank you. But yeah, she actually one day she reached out to me and she's like, "Oh, I know you're going on the subway. You'll be totally fine. Those 4 guys are with you. They're always with you." I'm like, "What 4 guys? What?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I see them all the time. They're with you now. They follow you everywhere. And I know that one stands in front, one in back, and one on either side. They're quite tall, and they're there to protect you." And so I know this. I've known this all along. And so I talk about this story in the book about how one day I was riding on the train, and as in New York City, we have very colorful people that can come onto trains with all kinds of issues. And so one came on at the far end of the train and started going bananas, screaming in everybody's faces, threatening to kill them, cussing them out. People were petrified. Yeah.
Yes.
And he came all the way down the train, got to me and stopped and went, and then mumbled to himself, backed away and got out at the next thing. And I said to myself, maybe I really do have these angels walking with me on the subway, because he didn't come but so close. So it's either that or he saw my crazy hair, and that was,
Oh, wait, when you were on the subway, you had that hair?
No.
Okay, but that would be a good way nobody's going to mess with you with that hair, Jezebel.
It's true, but you have to fit it on the subway. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Could you imagine getting on? I have to elbow. It's bad enough to elbow on with a backpack. Nevertheless, and this is my smallest hair, actually. This is the tiniest ever, yes.
I know, right? Because most of your hair could fill this entire screen on here. I was thinking, I hope we see a little face in there. The hair would be like overtaking the entire screen. Your name, Jezebel, it's a harlot name. How did you come up with that name?
So I wrote a web series called Jeza and the Bells. And that's actually how I came into drag. I was writing this web series about drag queen sisters who would save the world, because in my mind, as we had discussed, that God uses the things that we consider the most worthless. And I thought to myself, gosh, they drag queens through the mud, right?
And so superheroes.
Yeah, let them be superheroes. And so I named it Jeza and the Bells, because Jezebel is the biggest harlot, the biggest whore. And that's a perfect name, right? And so I was casting for the web series, filled the other two spots, and really couldn't find anybody to play Jezebel the way I wanted it to be played. And so I wound up stepping in, and I've been Jezebel ever since. So the name is just that. It's like, look, yeah, you think it's the worst thing in the world. I'm proud to carry that name, and I'll carry that name in the name of God. Thank you very much. Because if God can work through anybody, he can work through Jezebel too.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, once again, I never learned your real name. I still don't know your real name. And I don't want to know your real name, because Jezebel, to me and you, this is your real name, This is your chosen name, as we said. And it totally works for you. It absolutely totally works. Has there ever been a time where you felt you were being tested and that you thought about turning away from your faith?
The only time, and I share this a little in the book, that I really struggled was with the horrific, never-ending student loans that that I felt like were choking me drowning me. Right. And so at one point I just thought, wow, where is all this faith I have playing out? I'm waiting on it. But happy to say it took God's time, not my time, for it to happen, and my loans are gone. And it's like,
loans are gone. That's so amazing.
Yeah. And so I held on, and makes me say, just like Job, who was taken to the edge of belief. Yeah. Right. And I was taken to the edge of belief. But in the end, I say, wow, ye of little faith, because we don't know what tiny little speck starts at the top of the hill. Absolutely. That turns into an avalanche because of God. We're so short-sighted. We want the immediate, and God sees the long term. And so sometimes I have to say to myself, I don't have to know all this now. It's above my pay grade to have it totally figured out and be panicked over everything. Just give it over. Maybe he can see the bigger picture, not me.
Right. That's big, though. And as people, right, because we suffer from fear and anxiety, that's a biggie. Like for me too, things that have just like, oh my God, I just can't believe this is happening. And then say to myself, you know what, this is much bigger than you. And you really have to give it up to the universe at that point. And you know what, Jezebel, I try and do that more often, because look at the world we're in. There's a lot we can't control now. Surely we learned that from the pandemic. That was like, what was your reaction to the pandemic?
I'm going to tell you what I did immediately. My initial reaction was I ran out. Everybody was buying toilet paper and food.
I remember.
And before I knew what I did, I actually cracked up, because I sat down on the couch and I said, oh my gosh, everybody bought toilet paper and food. And I had bought like 16 bottles of champagne. I don't know what possessed me. I thought I could not live without champagne. What if they shut the liquor store? So that was my initial reaction.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So your your survival to get through the pandemic was going to drink champagne, right? The hell with toilet paper. You know what? You haven't used
Absolutely.
champagne, you don't care about toilet paper.
Absolutely. But if I'm going down with a glass of bubbly in my hands. So
That's right. And you know what? That's the only way to go down. Now, when you were in Christian college, were you thinking about becoming a comedian then? How did that all happen for you?
No, it really all happened when the web series started. I never in a million years would have thought about doing any of this, but when I did the web series, I seemed to find a voice that I didn't have before. And it
Was it
gave me,
just as a writer, or you ended up actually being a performer in your web series too? Did
I
like
wound up being Jeza Belle. Yeah, and that's really, so the writing was powerful, but it was the performing that I'm becoming and Jeza wound up taking over my life, in many ways. And I never, ever would have thought that would have happened, but it gave me a voice that I didn't have before. There's something very powerful about drag, and I
yeah,
did not know that, and I really embrace it today. I think we are sort of like the clarion call to the universe in a sense. We have a special role, a special position, and, embrace it. And
well,
use it
it's
for good.
also a special kind of entertainment. Tim Moss and I just were at the Glam Awards. We were nominated for our show If These Walls Could Talk, and right, but the thing Tim and I always talk about, that night is just such an amazing night because of the way the Glam Awards, it definitely everything is skewed towards drag. All right. But there's entertainers there too. It's mostly skewed towards drag. But when I look at the kids, and some of them are not nominated for anything, they just show up in the most fabulous outfits that they've created. Their makeup fits like they didn't even do in drag when I started. Now this airbrushing, these kids
Oh, I
are their
know, they're
own makeup
incredible.
artist. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable, right?
Right.
And the way
Mhm.
their hair is done. And a lot of them don't have a lot of money. They come up with an idea and they make it work. And then they come to the Glam Awards, which is such a great night for them. It's just this sounds crazy. It reaffirms my faith in humanity in many ways because it's the creativity, it's the commitment, and it really doesn't matter. Like Tim and I go every year. It doesn't matter if we're nominated or not. It's the spirit of that community. And it's what you just said about drag. It is so special. It's
It really
absolutely
is.
special. And that's why I look at you. You're like a vehicle for God to come forth with this book now, of course, and especially at a time when, drag queen story hours are being attacked and drag is attacked and everything's being attacked. You couldn't have come up with better timing for your book, really.
Well, divine time, and that's the best time for it to happen, right?
Right,
So
right,
yeah, this book means the world to me. I want it to touch hearts. I want people who have kind of turned away or maybe never even looked once the first time to take a look and say, maybe God, why not? Let me look and let me think about this for myself and not think about what anybody else has to say.
right,
Develop that my own conversation, my own relationship, find my own path.
right. It's your own path. I Some of the titles in here, they just really make you think. Love the sinner, hate the sin. Define.
It's a very, very famous Southern Christian phrase, and they use it often with gay people, right? Love the sinner, right? We love you, but we hate the sin. So we don't love really who you are.
Or
So
what
it's
you
like, well,
do.
gee,
Right, right,
yeah, gee, how nice of you. You love me, but you don't love me, actually. You
right,
only love me if I'm somebody you decide you want me to be. So it's such a load of crap.
right,
So I like to flip it on its head because I think when you really look at it, the sin is not loving all people for who they are. That's really the deep sin,
right,
not the sin that you define that somebody is doing wrong, sleeping around, whatever, sleeping with somebody, having a drink. Who cares? Who
right.
cares? What gender you identify as. Who cares? Like, none of that stuff is relevant to the salvation of a soul. It's so
Right.
unimportant. Get out and show some love. That's what's important.
Well, a lot of your chapters, that's what it comes back to at the end of the day is showing the love and feeling the love. It should be interesting. I hope we get to talk a couple of months from now as we get closer to the election and your book has been out a bit. I'm just so curious about not the reaction from the people in our community, because everybody who knows you has got to be so jazzed about you writing this book, right? But I'm curious to hear from the other side how they will interpret it going forward, because every day to me feels more and more challenging, that there's more and more outrageous stuff out there. And a lot of the time in our community, people, it screws with your psyche, or as you would say, fucks with your psyche, right?
Mhm.
How do you keep it from screwing with your psyche, Jeza Belle?
Because I don't let them, they can't own my spirit. My
They
spirit's
can't
only
use-
owned by, my spirit's only owned by the one who created it. They're not that powerful. They're really not. They're one speck of sand on a long, long shore. So
Right.
I'm not going to let any of them weigh me or take me down. And so, I'm expecting any day now for Margarine Green or whatever her name is.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you're listening, please, we have an area for comments on here. We want to hear what you have to say.
I'm expecting any moment for her to lose her mind, and that's just fine. Go right ahead.
Right.
We're all going to be okay.
Yeah, we're all going to be okay. Absolutely. What do you have now coming up in terms of your book promotion? Do you have some book signings planned? Are you going to incorporate the book into comedy performances?
So all of the above. I'm going to be attending actually several conferences that are up and coming, several Christian conferences that I'm being asked to speak at. I'm going to be at the Rainbow Book Fair in New York City coming up. And then I'm going to England. I'm looking very forward. Looks like I'll be performing in Liverpool and Manchester.
I love
in
it.
the spring, and looking forward to that. And just getting out there and really embracing this time in my life. I'm at a time in my life right now where I'm ready to just lay it on. This is who I am. I'm going to stand up. I'll stand by you. I'll hold your hand. And
Right.
we're going to get through things, whether it's by laughter, by tears, by prayer.
It's all human.
We're gonna get through. Yeah.
It's all human at the end of the day. Can you give us a date for the Rainbow Book Fair? That would be something some of our listeners would want to know about.
It is April, I want to say 22nd off the top of my head, 20th or 22nd.
Okay. And people can just Google Rainbow Book Fair, New York City, yes. Right?
It's the largest book fair for LGBTQ books in all of the United States, possibly the world.
So you're going to be,
right here in New York City.
You're going to have a table there. You'll have a table.
I sure will.
And you'll be signing books.
I'll be there signing books. I will sign your butt cheek if you buy 2. However, we can make this work. Come on down and see me.
Price a hard bargain.
I'll do a lot more if you want to buy 5.
Right. Oh, you can only imagine what you get if you buy 5 books. Mm-hmm. What do they say? Cheaper by the dozen? There you go.
Exactly. Yes. I'm good for a dozen or 2.
So people can meet you in person. They can get I am going to try and make that book fair. If I don't see you before then and get my book signed by you, that would be great. And that would totally interest me. Jeza Belle, we're down to the wire. One more pearl of wisdom that you'd like to tell people.
The biggest pearl I would say is love yourself.
Yes.
Right? Release yourself, because your creator made you. And if your creator loves you, who in the world are any of us, including you, to stand in your own way, to look down on yourself in any way? Love yourself, then you can love others.
That is the truest words. Love yourself, then you can love others. I always wrap up my show, Jeza Belle, by taking a picture. Cheese. I love to have these. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. The book is Jeza's Jesus Juice, a drag queen's Christianal devotional, and you can get it on Amazon. Thank you all very much, Jeza Belle. You are terrific. I wish you the best. Love you.
Thank you so much. Love you too. This was
a blast. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.